Well, if Star Trek fans have any kind of talent, it is in rationalizing the heck out of anything and making it work for them. If they want to. That's the big asterisk right there, is we are very much cherry pickers about what goes into our headcanon, you know.
Trek Profiles Podcast, episode 98, recorded November 2024. This is Trek Profiles, where each episode we talk with a Star Trek fan. We explore their fandom and we try to discover why Star Trek matters to us. I'm John, your intrepid host of this whole enterprise, and I welcome you to this, Trek Profiles episode 98. If you wish to get in touch with us, you can reach us at feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky, all at Trek Profiles. Spoiler warning on this show. Any episode of Trek may be discussed at any time. You have been warned, humans. As always, my trusty sidekick and co-host is the wily and witty, yet never winsome nor wistful M5 Multitronic unit.
M5. All systems nominal.
What are the announcements, M5?
Announcements displayed.
This is an independent show. If you'd like to support us, the best way you can do that is just to follow us wherever you are getting your audio. We are on all the major platforms, and your following us helps other Trek fans find us. My show is 100% advertising free. We don't have a supporters program or anything like that, but if you'd like to show some appreciation, I'd ask for your donation to our official charity that we support here on the show. That's the Children's Fund for Glycogen Storage Disease. There's a link at trekprofiles.com/donate that allows you to give directly to the charity if you'd like to participate. There are some lightly edited outtakes and bonus material at the end of this episode. It turns out that my guest Charlynn and I are both big Babylon 5 fans, so we got a little Babylon 5 content in the bonus material, plus some other stuff. All that will come after the ending audio cards. Enjoy it, or not, as you choose. At the end of every episode, my guest faces my Kobayashi Maru lightning round. They get 5 terrible multiple-choice Star Trek questions, and they have to give us their answers. After each episode drops, I tweet those questions out as polls where you can have your say. So let's take a look at the ones from episode 98 with Dominic Burgess and see how it went. Who are we joining up with, the Fenris Rangers or the Coat Malat? Dominic said the Fenris Rangers, and they also won in the online poll by 75 to 25%. Who's worse, Alexis or Kivas Fajo? Both of these horrendous people are just awful. My guest picked Kivas, and so did the online people by 86 to 14%. Which group is scarier, the Zat Vash or Section 31? Dominic said Section 31, and so did the online people who chose them by 82 to 18%. Worst mining gig, Bosunite or Magnesite? Everyone, including my guest, said Magnesite was the worst option here. And finally, who is joining the TNG bridge crew for poker? Shran, Weiyun 7, Brunt, or Penk? My guest picked Weiyun the 7th, but the online people wanted Shran by 62%, Weiyun the 7th got 31, Brunt got 7, and absolutely no one at all picked Penk. Now, if you enjoyed those questions and would like to take a stab at writing your own for possible inclusion in the show, send them to me, feedback@trekprofiles.com, or DM me on Twitter. That's it for announcements. Let's start the show. M5, roll it.
Commencing interview transmission.
Her favorite characters are Janeway and Jet Reno. She also loves the Horta and the Enterprise C. She is from Southern California, North America, Earth, and Sector 001. It's Charlynn Schmiedt. Welcome aboard, Char. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. I loved seeing you in Vegas this year. We actually got a chance to talk.
Yes.
Usually we're just passing each other in the hallway like, hey, how's it going? And then we're all both off to different places. And so that's usually the extent of our conversation. This year, we actually got to talk in the dealer's room. Ooh!
Amazing, right? I mean,
that was fun.
I find that STLV, whatever we're calling it now, it's always going to be STLV for me. I just keep it straight. But I'm always like running to something. And I'm always like triple booked, especially in the evenings with stuff. And
I feel that.
It's like, they're like, I've been a sponsor on a supporter of Roddenberry, for instance, which you're involved with. I've never gone to the party. Because there's always like 3 other things that I got going on that same day. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. But the Roddenberry Party is honestly the highlight of the last few conventions I've been to because that thing is a banger. Like the committee that puts that together, they planned for months to make it happen. They put so much work and effort into it, and every year they just make it even better than the last. Now, that said, I totally understand what you mean about being like triple booked. There's always a panel you can go to. There's usually more than one panel you want to go to at any given moment.
Oh,
Plus,
yeah.
you got to go to the dealer's room and spend way too much money. You're walking around saying hi to people. Like, I mean, there's always something. It's pandemonium. So, you know what? Next year, I'm glad they're going back to 5 days because maybe, just maybe, that'll help things out a little.
Question 1, Char, the M5 demands that I ask it immediately, which is, are you a Star Trek fan?
Checking. Yes, pretty sure I am.
And how'd you get into Star Trek?
Well, it was a long time ago now. I was 6 years old, and I got into Star Trek by watching reruns of the original series because that's what my dad was watching on TV. He was doing, I think, a refresh of the original series right before Next Gen was about to begin.
Oh,
so it was sort of like getting back into Star Trek for him. And so it was on the TV. And I just thought, oh, isn't this interesting? There's these people on this spaceship and they're going to visit aliens on other planets. And how cool is that? And so I started watching the show, and I thought it was just the coolest thing that Lieutenant Uhura was the only lady on the bridge. I wanted to be her. I did ask one year for a red dress, maybe my first cosplay.
Nice.
Green hoop earrings, the clip-ons, of course, because I was 6.
Yes.
And I did not get it.
Oh.
But I did ask. But I think my mom just thought it was weird. You know, she didn't understand. So anyway, I would just kind of drop in here and there, see what's going on in the Star Trek land. And then that sort of bled into watching Next Gen every now and then when that was on. Like, I didn't watch it as religiously as my dad did until about the 3rd season of TNG.
Okay.
And we're going to get into the episode that hooked me.
Okay.
We will get there. And pretty much from that point forward, I mean, it's been watch everything over and over and over again.
Does that mean that as we sit here in 2024, you've seen all the Star Trek?
Yes, I have.
Even animated series?
Yes. I did watch that when I was a kid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was on Nickelodeon, believe it or not. For a little while,
Goodness,
I remember
okay.
I lost my first tooth. That's why I remember this, while watching an animated series. And I had a Jolly Rancher. I was sucking on a Jolly Rancher, and out comes the tooth and just, blood and So I missed like half of the episode, and I was really bummed because I didn't know when I was going to see it again, because at the time we didn't even have a VHS recorder. So
Right.
this was back in the day. If you didn't catch it on live TV, well, better luck next time.
There's a question that usually comes up at this point, since you mention it, which is that when you're wanting to sit down and watch Star Trek today, how are you rewatching it? Do you watch seasons at a time, or do you pick the old favorites? And the reason I ask, let me just get this part out. And the reason I ask is because I think people like you and I, where we grew up, where we had to watch an episode that was selected for us, versus people who came to Star Trek when they had, all streaming, every episode available all the time. I think the experience is a little different. So how have you internalized this, and how do you decide what to watch?
That's such an interesting question because it has evolved over time. Back in the 90s, as a cheap, broke high school student, I would record as many episodes on VHS tapes as I could. And so DS9 and Voyager, when they were running concurrently, it would be a Voyager episode, DS9, Voyager, DS9. And I would just watch them over and over and over until I actually wore out a lot of my tapes, and they would break in my VCR player. Nowadays, it's a little different. I am rewatching DS9 and Voyager with the Delta Flyers podcast and Mission Log, respectively. But I'm watching the new stuff too, of course. And usually when that happens, when it drops on Thursdays, I'll watch it first thing in the morning, get it out of the way, because I gotta know before I get on the internet. I don't want any spoilers. I gotta see what I'm missing, and then I can start my day. Usually that's how that goes, unless there's something on fire work-wise, but usually that doesn't happen. So I'll watch it, and then I'll watch it again later that day because my husband, even though he is not terribly into science fiction, does watch the newer Star Trek with me. It's very sweet.
Aww.
So we will watch whatever new episode is on and watch it a second time there. And then who knows, maybe more after that, especially if I am preparing to do something like Mission Log Live, where I'm talking about a new episode of Lower Decks right now or something like that. otherwise, maybe it's just those two for a while, and then I let it sit and come back to it. I try to do season rewatches altogether when a season's complete. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, because I'm sure you remember how in the years 2022 to 23, there was Star Trek practically every single week.
Yes. A time
was hard to keep up.
I don't think we'll ever get back there. I don't think that will never be happening again.
It was just an embarrassment of riches for us. And so, you know what? I'm hoping maybe a few years down the line, just go back and pick random seasons of episodes from, seasons of that era. So let's do a Picard Season 1 rewatch. Let's do Disco Season 3, that sort of a thing.
I know that you do a Star Trek Prodigy podcast. So my question for you is, because we had Star Trek Prodigy dropped all at once for Season 2, how did you choose to attack it? Did you hold off? Did you just consume it all at once and then do your show? Or what did you choose to do?
This was the big question, wasn't it? We found out they were all dropping. I was halfway hoping they wouldn't. But here's what I did is, first pass, I had to binge it. I watched it all in 48 hours.
Oof.
I did not have a life. Everything got put on hold so I could watch all 20 episodes. But then after that, when it came to doing Mission Log, we didn't want to go through it as quickly as possible just because they dropped all 20 episodes at once. No, we wanted to really take our time and analyze each episode with as much detail and get as much nuance out of it as possible. And so I got to do the other way, which is the usual way that we're used to, which is one episode a week. And we're just going to go one by one by one. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And we started that in July, and our very last episode for Season 2 airs next week in November as we're recording this.
Do you happen to recall what was the first episode you saw? Now, you said it was TOS. Do you happen to have a recollection of the first one that made an impression on you?
Sadly, no. I do not remember which episode was the very first that I watched. I remember little bits of episodes that I watched. I know I watched Trouble with Tribbles. I know I watched The Conscience of the King. I know I watched Spock's Brain. But beyond that, which one was the first? No. Unfortunately, I do not.
That's fair. That's fair. It sounds like you are watching with your husband when you're watching Star Trek these days.
Yeah.
Are you watching it on a device, or do you have a big screen, or what are you doing? How do you consume it?
We are not big, huge techies in our house, so we've got a 65-inch TV in our living room, and that's how we watch it. We're not super fancy. We don't have some badass sound system or anything like that. The TV does not take up the whole wall. We have what we have, and we just go with that. It's fine.
All right, very cool. So did you ever feel the need to collect anything Star Trek related?
There was a point when I did, and I had all of the Playmates mid-90s action figures, especially TNG. I had all the play sets, the transporter and the bridge.
Oh, nice.
And then I gave them all away to a kid down the street who was a Star Trek fan, because I was a teenager at that point. I wasn't doing anything with them, and I thought, what is all this doing here? I'm not really using it, and he might really appreciate it. And so I just gave it all to him.
I'm still annoyed that I gave away stuff. Or got rid of stuff. I mean, the one thing I probably could get on eBay if I really wanted to was, I had this beautiful cutaway poster of the 1701 refit that came out around the time of Motion Picture.
Oh.
And you can find the images online. It's out there, and I'm sure I could spend some amount of money to get it. But I had the originals, and I gave them away. It's how it goes.
Yeah.
It's how
There's
it goes.
times I regret not keeping a lot of that kind of stuff around, and at the same time, it's just stuff. I don't have a whole lot of sentimental value attached to a lot of objects, especially if I can't use them and appreciate them. So I don't have a whole bunch of ships, or I do have some action figures. For instance, at my desk, I do have the Prodigy action figures. They've stayed
Very
with
nice.
me ever since they were released, along with a couple of salamanders, because reasons. They get to
Janeway
hang out together.
salamanders?
There's two of them, so it's Janeway and Tom, yes.
Yes. Oh.
And the kids, we don't know where they went.
I still can't get over the fact that they left the kids.
I was really seriously hoping Prodigy would address this since they were kind of over in that territory, and Janeway just that whole thing. I mean, she even brings up, I used to be a salamander. Yeah, where are your kids?
I feel like it's more of a lower decks thing. Like I could just imagine them showing up in some episode and just, I don't know, laying waste to everything or something, or being like the big bad, in the behind the season or something. I don't know.
I mean, there were some salamanders in one episode where it was, the nice farm up north, basically, where accidents go to have a nice rest of their life.
Right on. So you don't have a big collection now, but what do you have left, if anything?
I really don't have a big, huge collection. I've got the Prodigy action figures. I have a Eagle Moss Voyager that was given to me, as well as a Delta Flyer. And I've got a couple of other keepsakes that I don't even have out right now, just because maintaining that in the household is just a lot of work. And so I don't have a lot. I really don't. I mean, I've got some books. I've got the DVDs, of course. But when it comes to a lot of merch, I'm a nerd for T-shirts. That's my thing, is I want wearables.
Okay.
Or things that I can use, practical items. And so I'm usually buying somebody's fan art T-shirts.
Okay.
One, because they're better priced and you're supporting a independent artist, but also StarTrek.com selection, well, the quality, that wavers in terms of taste.
So what's your favorite T-shirt you have?
Ooh, oh, golly. This is way too tough of a question than it should be.
All right. Oh, that sounds like it was a good question then.
It was a very good question. Can I think on it for a moment?
You can.
Okay. Well, okay. This is really tough. I think I got to give you more than one answer if that's okay.
Sure, go for it.
All right. So the first thing that I got to mention is my trio of shirts from Melissa Longo, Walking Art made by Melissa. It's line drawings of various Star Trek characters, and I have Sisko, Guinan, and Uhura. And she does a really clever job of putting words into her drawings. So like for Guinan, it says listener toward the bottom, and then there's Guinan with her hat. And I love that shirt so much. And I've worn Sisko almost to the point of wearing it out now. But let's see, there's others. I truly adore one of the things that I picked up at Star Trek Las Vegas this year. Actually, many T-shirts I picked up this year, but the crown jewel was going to Bonnie Gordon and buying a shirt that says, "Even the whales are evil," from Prodigy. I did not know that would be there, and I had to have it the moment I saw it.
That's perfect.
So I had to get all the Prodigy merch because that is what we had, really, there. She had Murph socks and some Murph glasses, and then the shirt, and I just, give me one of everything, Bonnie, please. Take my money.
Bonnie was a guest on this show, by the way, so we'll put a link up to that in the show notes.
Love it.
If you wanna send me some snaps of those T-shirts, I'd love to post them, and I can put up a link as well to where you get them if they're still available. So people want to check them out, they certainly can do that.
Yeah, cool. So maybe there's one more right now that I'm trying to wear judiciously, just because I wear shirts out so hard.
Okay.
And it's all because it's gold. Gold is not a color that I wear terribly much, but this was appropriate for this shirt to be gold. And that is because it's sort of like a silhouette drawing of Captain Pike and his mount of hair.
Nice.
And again, I had to have that.
Did you see that guy who was at STLV either last year or the year before that had like a Pike hair that was like, had to be 8 inches high?
Oh gosh, I think I saw more than one, if I'm being completely honest.
I think there was a couple of those guys, yeah.
Yeah, there's many mounts at Star Trek conventions in the last couple of years. So I love it.
Speaking of conventions, what was the first sci-fi or fantasy convention you ever went to?
Very first one was ValleyCon in 2012. That's like a local convention in the Fargo-Moorhead area in North Dakota, where I was living at the time. And it was my very first time, not just attending a convention, but being like one of the people to help run it. I had no idea what I was doing. I don't know why in the world they let me do anything.
And who was the headliner?
It was Nicole DeBoer. And
Okay.
since I was the big resident Star Trek fan in that group, they let me tote her around in I called it the Honda Civic limo.
Okay.
My 2004 Honda Civic. Thank God she was cool with that, because that's what I had. It was clean. I cleaned it before she got in there. Yeah, so I got to spend some time with her. I took her to the hotel from the airport, made sure that she was, taken care of, basically manned her table when she needed a break to go get some food or what have
Mhm.
you. And so that was fun. It was great. So, we got to be buddies and dropped her off at the airport when all was said and done and got a photo with her. And then security wanted to ticket me because I was parked in the spot where it's just the drop off zone. I'm like, okay, we got to go,
So
because we were spending so much time.
so some people are just fans and consume the show. Some people go to conventions, but it sounds like you actually got a job working at a convention and were working in the fandom since an earlier age. So you've sort of been more, and you've continued that in working with Roddenberry and creating podcast content too, it seems.
Yeah, well, this was 2012, so I was already in my 30s. So I
Okay.
had plenty of time to just be a consumer. But to be honest, I mean, really, especially through college at the very minimum, I was way too broke and poor to go to any conventions or go to Star Trek The Experience or anything like that. I really regret missing out on that, but there was no way. And then even after that, though, I mean, working on a journalist's salary, yeah, that's not a whole lot of disposable income. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it took so long. And it was a local convention. And it's like getting the acting bug. You know how a lot of performers will talk about that. I got the convention bug. I thought, oh, this is fun. You walk into the room and there's 10,000 people you immediately have at least one thing in common with.
Absolutely.
Where else is that going to happen? So
Mhm.
had a blast. And then 2013 was my first Star Trek Las Vegas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I dove in.
And have you been going consistently, or do you just go every once in a while to STLV? I
Off
mean,
and
how does that
on.
work for you?
Yeah, I think I'm now going to be going more often than not. But starting in 2013, I went in 13, skipped 14, did 15 and 16, and then got a little house poor because we
Mhm.
bought a house in Southern California.
Sure.
So I really missed everything up through COVID and up until 2022. And
The
then I
Bally's
came back.
convention.
The Bally's convention. We will never forget, will we?
We will not. If anything was going to make me appreciate the Rio, it was the
Oh
Bally's.
my God. Who thought we would ever be saying those words? But we did en masse. And then coming back to the Rio in 2023, it was just like, oh, I'm home.
Yeah, and they've made a lot of improvements in 2024 as well with the new management. So I look
Yeah.
forward to seeing how it all works out.
Yeah. So, yeah, now that I am doing things more with Roddenberry Entertainment, chances are I'm going for a little bit of business, a little bit of pleasure, doing panels or whatever needs to get done. I don't care. Just, yeah, I'll come. I'll be there.
So what induced you to start doing podcasting?
I really rediscovered my Trek fandom in
Mhm.
2010 and wanted to do something creative. I wanted some sort of outlet. I was really my soul was being sucked away by my job.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
And I was not having a very good time, and I just needed an outlet where I could just enjoy something. And I started looking around at places that were sort of like, blog magazines of the day,
Mhm.
where they were looking for writers and you could write articles. And I found Trek FM, and
Mhm.
turned out they were doing some podcasts. And I'd never done a podcast before. And in fact, it's so funny saying this now, but I hated public speaking. Oh my God. Yeah, you would not get me to talk in front of a microphone. Oh my, no. But
Look
I
at
got
you
talked
now.
into it. I know, right? No, you can't get me to shut up. Uh, that's how it happens, guys. Yeah, I got invited to do a podcast. I thought, well, you know what? If it's terrible, they'll never have me back. And, no one will remember it. It'll be fine.
Right.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and it was a great way to explore something really deep, deep and deeply, I should say, about a subject that I really loved and was just having sort of this renaissance of rediscovering all the Star Trek that I'd watched when I was growing up, because I took a break during college. I didn't really watch a whole lot of Star Trek. Even when Enterprise was airing, I went back and watched it, but it took a little while to get there. And that was it for me. I just thought, oh, well, that's a lot of fun. So I started getting involved in more podcasts, and I really haven't stopped since.
Which podcasts are you currently producing or starring on?
Let's see. So right now you can find me doing Second Contact with my longtime co-host, Tristan Riddell. We did a little thing called To the Journey back in the day,
Mhm.
and that is a Lower Decks commentary podcast. We do that every week. And let's see, I also do Mission Log Prodigy with Marina Kravchuk. That is on Roddenberry Entertainment, either as a podcast or a video cast. And I also do Star Trek and Chill, which is a live stream with
Okay.
virtual TrekCon's finest Ryan T. Husk, Melissa Longo, Katie Nicolau, random guest Jenny R. Johnson. And we just sit back, pour ourselves a beverage, and talk about Star Trek for 2 hours. And that's
Nice.
a perfect way to cap off the week. So you can find me most Friday evenings doing that. And then I do a lot of stuff on the Mission Log Discord as well, because that thing's a party. We have a good time.
Oh yeah, I'm in the Discord. I see all the activity going on in there. It's just amazing. I don't post very much. In fact, I don't think I've posted hardly at all. But it's a great read to see all the commentary and all the creativity and all the insanity. It's glorious. So I'm happily along for that ride.
Nice.
I do have a question for you, Sharp.
Okay.
Which is sometimes we hear these stories of people getting introduced to Star Trek by their family members. And so the question I always follow up with is, have you exceeded your father in your Star Trek fandom? Or is he right there with you? How has that developed?
I have. And it's unfortunate because he's not a big fan of streaming services. So I hook him up with the discs as soon as they're available and try and catch him up. But yeah, I don't think he's nearly as much of a completionist as I am. And it's just a TV show to him. And that's okay.
Okay.
I've taken it much further than that.
Right on. Right on. Well, the M5 is telling me that it's time for some episodes. Are you game?
Let's go.
Let's talk about Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country. This, of course, is the one where we have the amazing Klingon dinner scene. We have General Chang, and we have the photon torpedoes that can smell the exhaust fumes from the Klingon bird of prey. So what I'm interested in is, what about this movie touched you, Shar? How did it affect your life? What did it make you think about something in a new way? Did you have an insight? Tell me.
The reason why this is an important part of my Star Trek fandom is because it's the first movie that my dad and I saw together, a Star Trek movie. I wasn't quite into Star Trek when Star Trek V came out, and I don't know if he even went to that in the theater. We were more of the VHS homebody type
Okay.
in our house. But when Star Trek VI came out and it was advertised as the last big adventure with the original crew, he's like, we've got to go. We went that weekend, and it was like nasty snow, just feet of snow on the ground. Did not care. We piled up in his big truck and we went.
Was this also in North Dakota?
No, I grew up in Wyoming, so plenty of snow there too.
Yeah.
And, this was 91, so there was actually like some winter going on there at that time. It was sort of like Rurapenta.
Yeah.
Uh,
So if you're watching that part, you're like, oh, this is literally my backyard right now.
For real, though, the drifts can get, 10 feet high. It's disgusting.
Right on.
So anyway, yeah, that was Star Trek VI was our first movie going together, and it started a tradition. We didn't know it at that time, but then when Generations came out, we had to go see that. We saw First Contact and so on, up until the very last Kelvin movie in 2016, where distance kept us apart. I did not get to Wyoming in time to take him to the theater and go together with him. So I broke the streak, and I'm sad about that, but we had a really good run.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's how you consumed most of the movies. Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
And it was okay with you, like the Pepto-Bismol blood, like the betrayal by Valeris and all of that?
At the time, I loved the Pepto-Bismol blood. Just because, it's alien. Of course they're going to have different color of blood. Sure. Easy to buy that. The whole, forced mind meld thing with Valeris, I did not realize why that was such, it was intense. I understood that, but as a 10-year-old, I don't think I understood all the reasons why at that time.
Yeah, when you go back and watch it now, you're like, ooh.
Oh, yeah, it's a little different now, for sure. But
problematic,
back then,
as the kids might say.
It was just like, well, okay, Spock, you're doing what you have to do, but she's got nothing in there, so please stop. So I was much more interested in things like the Excelsior and the idea that, oh, maybe will Captain Sulu get his adventures back when there was the talk of a Captain Sulu series and stuff
Right.
like that. It was like, oh, they're passing the baton to the future. And even though we had Next Gen, it was also like there's this whole other new class of ships in this time, too. Maybe we'll get some more out of that.
I was talking to someone, another guest who I had recorded an episode with, and I said, "What's your favorite starship?" And normally you get like the Enterprise. Sometimes you get people who they'll tell you whichever version. It's fine.
Sure.
Sometimes people will say they'll come out with some like weird thing like the D7 or the Romulan Bird of Prey. And this dude says to me, the Excelsior class. And I was like, oh, that is unusual. Tell me why. And it's like, it is the most elegant design of all the ships. And I was like, oh. And every time I see it, I think Excelsior, so elegant.
When they show us for the first time in Star Trek 3 in Space Dock, I mean, that does look like the future, baby. Yeah, the NX 2000, because everything futuristic had to be a 2000 at that time.
Right. I think the design was really good. I mean, it really did look like, an iteration or maybe, an iteration plus on the refit design. So I thought it was a good ship.
It is a good ship. It's a tough little ship, if we will.
Oh dear, that's a reference. No, wait, that's not a reference. That's not a reference.
That's referencing the Defiant.
I was thinking of One Little Ship. Sorry, I was thinking of a Deep Space Nine episode.
No, the Excelsior class, they were such workhorses. Those things lasted forever. They were like the Toyota Corolla of Starfleet.
They were the Honda Civic of Starfleet.
That too.
Oh, because you mentioned it before with your car. So I was making a callback. Okay, let's talk about another episode. Let's talk about yesterday's Enterprise. Now, this episode gets brought up a lot on Trek Profiles. This, of course, is the one where we find out what's going on with the Enterprise C. We get Captain Rachel Garrett. We get Tasha Yar. A lot of stuff happening in this episode. But what I want to know from you is, why is this episode personally significant?
I mentioned earlier that something was going to come out a little bit later as a thread. Okay, this was the episode that turned me into a Star Trek fan. And because it's such a good episode, let's be honest, it's one of the very best fun adventures, especially of the episodes. It's like a movie, but on a TV screen. This was the one that hooked me. This was when I started watching every episode of Star Trek, and I could not miss it from this point forward. Like, oh my gosh, this not only is this fun, but it's good and it's thought-provoking, and that sort of sparked that whole thing of, oh, Star Trek is telling us some things. Yes, it took that long for the wheels to get spinning. Remember, I was 10.
Yes, of course.
So those higher brain functions were just starting to kick in at right about this time. And yeah, I just started seeing more to Star Trek. And so then it was actually fun to go back and see things that I knew I'd seen many times before, but to get big, some of the messages and the nuance out of it. Like Star Trek 2, sure, yeah, there's space battles. It's a good time. I love to watch it all over and over and over and over again. But now there's all the themes of aging and the concepts of that. And so even at 10, I was starting to get more perceptive to that and realizing, oh, Captain Kirk is having a midlife crisis. This is cool. Which was a weird thing for a 10-year-old to think, but I was an absolute freaking nerd bomber and made no apologies for it. I mean, I was watching Star Treks 2 through 4 over and over and over during my summer vacation and telling my friends I did not care what they thought of it.
Hey, I'm going to watch Star Trek and that's it. Get on board or get lost.
Yeah, I would ride my bike to my grandma's house because she had a nicer TV set than we did, and my mom had an in-house daycare. So I got away from those kids, and I would just watch Star Trek over and over and over and eat bean burritos at my grandma's house.
I agree the episode is tremendous, but I will admit that sometimes I struggle a bit with episodes like this. So let me lay out something and see if you can maybe talk me out of my insanity here.
Okay.
Which is, for me, one of the things I love about Star Trek is I think the fundamental message of it is that humanity's best days are in front of us.
Yeah.
And we solve the things, and the future is bright. And whenever we have episodes that are sort of alternative timelines or like not really our characters or mirror universe stuff, it's no longer about our future. Because it's not us, it's these other people in this other timeline that, don't really, that's not going to be our future. So I always think I love the episode as a production. I love, all the drama in it. It's fantastic. I'm not criticizing any of that. But sometimes it just takes something away from me when I watch the episode that even though the story is very satisfying, I think it's less Star Trek. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. So I just wanted to give you something to react to. But that is my true opinion on it. But I'm curious if you want to say anything about that.
That's a great little tidbit to chew on. And I think in some instances, yeah, that can be a real downer. And then there's other instances, and I think yesterday's Enterprise falls into this category where it is a reminder of why it is important to build the better future. Because look at what could happen. If you prevent that war with the Klingons, things go a heck of a lot better for all of us.
If you want the good future, you got to get on board with preventing the bad future.
Pretty much.
I gotcha. But this is also the reason I struggle, like the more that you spend time in the mirror universe, I love like the actors getting to do some really wild stuff and really ham it up and go psycho with chewing up the scenery and I am so evil now.
Yeah.
I love it. I love everything about it, but as far as that goes. But I always think like,
I've got issues with that
people.
as well. Yeah. It's one of those things that has to be done so sparingly because how is anybody in that universe alive? They're all killing each other.
It doesn't make a lick of sense. But I will also say,
No, it doesn't.
I think that trying to understand even just the pure Federation worlds that we see in our prime universe Star Trek future don't make a lick of sense either. I mean, it's not, they were never trying to do like in-depth world building, here's how the economy works and here's how this works and here's how we solved all the things and here's how we assign housing to people. I mean, it's just that they're not trying to do that. The other shows try to do that. Star Trek ain't. And I think fans sometimes tie themselves into knots trying to figure that stuff out. I think it's folly, but I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Well, if
Please do.
Star Trek fans have any kind of talent, it is in rationalizing the heck out of anything and making it work for them. If they want to. That's the big asterisk right there, is we are very much cherry pickers about what goes into our headcanon,
Oh, God.
and stuff like that. Like, okay, it's like... This is a TV show, guys, and we love this because it does give us that hope for a better future and shows us what it could look like, even if the logistics are completely mind-bogglingly illogical.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something to strive for, right? And it's better than what we have now. And sometimes if you sweat the details, you can lose that.
Let's talk about another movie. Let's talk about Star Trek 2009.
Yeah.
The amazing reboot with, oh my gosh, oh so much lens flare. So lens flare for days. Lens flare all the way down.
Every
So,
5 seconds.
Tell me what's going on with this one for you. How pivotal was it in your Star Trek fandom experience?
This, I think, was the spark that eventually got me back into Trek after that break that I mentioned. So, as is tradition, my dad and I, we go to see Star Trek 2009 opening weekend. That opening scene with George Kirk and the Kelvin.
And Captain Robau.
Love him.
Love him. Big fan.
You would do a great Captain Robau cosplay.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You could do that for sure. So the end of that scene and roll the opening credits, we just kind of were like jaws on the floor. This is Star Trek? Is the whole movie going to be this good? Oh my God. We were beside ourselves. We couldn't believe it. It was that very important shot in the arm that the franchise needed, just because there was so much fatigue after Enterprise got cut off. And so it was like, oh, Star Trek is back, baby. And it's back big. And so we were very excited about that. And that just got me to appreciate Star Trek and all that came before again, to start watching things like the DVDs and stuff that I hadn't pulled out in a little while, and then realizing, hey, you know what? Some of this stuff, maybe I didn't give it as much of a chance back in the day, but it's really good.
I think I can pinpoint the exact moment I realized in 2009 that in the 2009 film that something really different was happening in Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's when we saw Big Eye Nurse Lady on the shuttlecraft. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And I just saw that whatever manipulation they were doing to make that effect, I just felt like they're really trying to deliver on like this really wild federation where we're going to have lots of different kinds of races running around. And it's not just going to be like all humans with like the occasional, person wearing some different skin color or a nose prosthetic. They were really doing something kooky, which I loved. I was here for that. But I remembered being in the theater when Big-Eyed Nurse Lady comes up and I was like, whoa, what is this?
Right. Yeah. Really cool. Just attention to detail like that. Yeah, it really definitely did give Star Trek, and especially the original series era, kind of a nice revitalization. Like, this is the way it always should have been. But of course, this poor scrappy TV show couldn't possibly do the things that we could do in 2009. And so here it is. And J.J. Abrams did a beautiful job of bringing that to life.
One of the things I've said before on this show is that I think animated Trek, and by that I'm being very expansive in talking about Prodigy, Lower Decks, and even animated series, the original one from the 70s, is that they're able to deliver the really wild sci-fi kind of concept in a way that live action Trek just cannot do.
Yeah.
I mean, where you just have like, the 3-armed navigator who's there every episode. I mean, they could do that with CGI and like one episode spend $1 quadrillion on it, but they're not going to make that a regular that has like a fully articulated third arm. But you can do that in animated Trek. And I loved it. I always love it when you see like the crazy aliens just walking around in the background, the bird people, Dr. Miggly Moo, whatever.
Yes.
It's glorious. It's glorious.
I love that too. It's so much fun. I'm so glad they leaned into that just because they can. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. And I cannot get enough of it. But enough about me. We are here to talk about you. So let's talk about another episode. Let's talk about Caretaker, the Voyager premiere, episodes 1 and 2, where the Voyager gets flung across the galaxy into the Delta Quadrant. So tell me, what about Caretaker was important or notable for you?
I mean, it's really about Voyager. And Caretaker is the episode that starts the party, so I had to pick Caretaker. But Voyager was the series for me. I was at the right time and age and place in my life. And yes, as a female, having a female captain, the first one to command a series, had more of an influence than I realized. Janeway became like my second mom,
Oh, wow. Awesome. Okay.
This was the series that I paid the most attention to overall. From the moment that it was announced that this was in development to the day that it went off the air. I've never done that with really any other Trek show from the 90s era. Voyager was the first and only. So Caretaker as a pilot was really like, okay, they're doing something really different here. They are going to go back to the more Strange New Worlds kind of aspect of the original series. It's going to be more rough and tumble. The rules are going to be different. They might not know our rules. And I just thought the premise of Voyager was so much fun. And I immediately loved all of these characters. And I just really was here for all of the antics in those earlier seasons as they really tried to figure it out.
Antics is a great way to describe it.
Yeah, I'm particularly thinking of Elogium, those kind of antics, where things got a little weird on Voyager.
Yeah, things got freaky on Voyager quite a bit.
Freaky, man. And I love it for that. I love that we had, at that time, some really oddball episodes that would never get made today.
Oh, completely agree. Completely agree.
But
and the list would be voluminous. The list would be very long of what episodes they would not make today. So here's my question for you, Char.
Yes, sir.
Is it still your favorite?
Yes, but there are competitors.
Oh, dear. Okay, so tell me. What's in the running to knock it off?
All right. Voyager is my sentimental favorite.
Okay.
It's got by far, 30 years. Oh my God, we're old. Of sentiment behind it. So really, not much can compete with that longevity. But in terms of quality and entertainment, I love Lower Decks. That is just the biggest love letter to Star Trek that could ever be. It is written and made by people who love the show as much as we do, who know how much we love the show. And it's just like getting a big hug. It's therapeutic every week when there's a new episode. It just feels so good. I don't care really what they're doing. I just want to check in and see what's happening on the Cerritos. I love these characters. But of course, I also am endeared to Prodigy because that is such an incredibly detailed and well-crafted show. It's got so much nuance to it. I mean, it was introduced as and marketed as a kids show, but really,
yeah.
anyone 5 to 155, it doesn't matter if you're a Star Trek fan already or not. Everybody can watch that show. It is a great entry point to Star
Absolutely.
Trek. And it is fun. It is well thought out. These are great characters figuring themselves out. It's a beautiful idea, too, that these are not originally a Starfleet crew. They become a Starfleet crew. So I just love the whole thing, and I love the diversity of characters in Prodigy. Everybody has their talents that make the team work. And of course, morals, meanings, messages. I mean, go examine those in detail on Mission Log Prodigy, but there are so many. And so what a better thing to watch with your kids or have, or to watch as a kid if you're not with your adults. But either way, it's really good entertainment. And it's good lessons for adults, too, because we need to be reminded of some things.
Since you live in Southern California, I have to ask,
Yeah.
have you ever bought a car in Cerritos?
I have. I've been to Cerritos. I have not bought a car.
Okay. So for those who don't know, Cerritos in Southern California is literally the place to buy a car. They have
There's
like
so
every
many
car dealership.
dealerships.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I bought, last time I bought a car was a little closer to home, but I certainly saw all the listings for Cerritos. Yeah.
Okay. I just had to ask. Believe
Believe me, it
about
was
that.
tempting.
All right, let's talk about Strange New Worlds. Let's talk about Ad Astra per Aspera.
Yeah.
This, of course, is our courtroom episode where we have the whole adjudication of the Illyrian genetic modifications and so forth. So what is it about this episode that speaks to you, Shah?
I think in terms of the newer Star Trek, this is about as pure Star Trek as we've gotten so far.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really makes it resonate with me, is people fighting for just their right to live and be just because of who they are. I mean, how many people can relate to that right now, especially in an age where people are trying to take away rights? And that is exactly what Una goes through. And I can't think of anything more apt and relevant than that.
There's this weird thread, now that I think about it, going right back to the original series, where you'll usually see it in episodes where they have colonies or settlers. And the Federation is supposed to be great. And so the question is always, why would you leave it? Right? Why? Right. And in so many cases, and I think in TOS they had this, there was some of this in TNG, people would say, well, we wanted to live a different way, or we wanted to do things our own way. And so we had to get out of the Federation and go settle on our own planet to do our own thing. And it's just, like I said, Star Trek is not really good at the world building stuff, right? That's not really something they were trying to do.
No.
But it is always a provocative question for me to think about. Why would you pack up and go to some planet where you're going to live basically like a farmer, even though you have replicators, you have some modern comforts, I'm not saying they didn't have those things, but you're having a very different kind of life for some reason. And I always wonder about that. I think that there's some of that in this episode as well, right? People want to live how they want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, they're trying to do it in the Federation. But I think that that story is something that sort of is right there in sort of right under the covers in a lot of episodes, going right back to the original show.
That's a really good point. Yeah, there had to have been a lot of groups of people who liked the idea of the Federation, wanted to be a part of it, and for whatever reason, eventually opted out and said, we'll go stake it out on our own.
Yeah, it happens. And what's surprising to me is, now that I think about it, is how many episodes where we see examples of this.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
They're all over.
Yeah, it's just so much. And so you got to think why are people doing that? I don't know. I feel like there's an untold story there, or maybe there's something in some book somewhere, but I don't feel like it's a question we ever really got an answer to.
It makes me question, okay, how much of the good guy is Starfleet? I mean, Starfleet is supposed to be the good guys and the heroes because that is our point of view as an audience. But I very recently rewatched the Jem'Hadar from DS9.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was thinking, Starfleet really started this whole thing. All they had to do was bugger off and not say, I can invade your space whenever I want. What? Are you kidding?
All right. Let's get controversial for a second.
Okay.
I think one of the reasons that the Borg make a really good foil for our Starfleet characters is that the Federation is a type of Borg in that they assimilate cultures and sort of turn them into Federation protectorates and sort of have the same type of goal as the Borg, but they do it a different way. I mean, obviously they're not doing it with violence. They're not trying to, stick tubules in people.
Right,
but
right.
They go to these planets, they join the Federation, right? And there's sort of a sameness that we see in a lot of the Federation worlds, and I'm not saying it's some deliberate thing. I'm not saying it's malicious, but I do note a point of comparison there.
And that's a fair comparison because to join the Federation, you do have to follow a certain set of rules and ideals, laws. If you don't, you're out. You're not allowed in. So
it's
depending
weird.
on your point of view, you might think that's great, or you might think, well, you know what, then fine. Screw you.
One of the things we were talking about before we began the official recording was we were doing a little bit of podcaster sort of talk, which is of interest to nobody except for podcasters. How do you master your episodes and how do you edit and, what sort of tools are you using in the editing rack and, all this other sort of,
very
shop
inside
talk.
baseball.
But one of the things that does signify is how much work goes into putting together a podcast of any kind.
Indeed.
Most podcasters, and I don't think Star Trek podcasters at all really do this much, is, you don't just like press record and, press stop and then package it up and ship it, right? There's a lot of other things on the front end and the back end that go into creating the kinds of shows that you and I do. And that's merely a way of saying that, any podcast takes a vast amount of time. Now, you're involved in several Star Trek podcasts.
Yes.
And you're very involved in the fandom. So obviously Star Trek's a big part of your life and you're devoting a lot of time and effort to it. My question is, why is Star Trek a part of your life? Why do you care about it?
Because it does give me hope. And I know that's the kind of commonplace answer, but it's also true. You know what? Life in the 21st century has certainly had its ups and downs. And as a species, boy, have we got so much to learn. I would love to think that we eventually do get our together and do go to the stars and we do set aside our differences because they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. And we have to make it work with aliens. And how is that going to go if we can't get ourselves into some sort of semblance of peace? So Star Trek gives me that hope and belief that humanity can be better than it is now. It's just an ongoing process. We have to keep working toward it, and it has to be earned. It will never be given to us. So Star Trek does not necessarily show us how to build the future, unfortunately, because I don't know if anybody has that answer. If they did, I suppose they'd share, right? We doing that hard work. But it does show what might happen if we try. So that's important to believe in. We all got to believe in something. And so Star Trek restores my faith in humanity, and that's important to me because most of the time I don't have faith in humanity.
Well, Char, I've enjoyed our conversation. I hope you have as well.
I have, thank you.
But the M5 is a harsh taskmaster, and he's signaling me that it is now time for the Kobayashi Maru.
Okay.
The Kobayashi Maru is a challenging and difficult test, cunningly prepared by the M5 just for you. Should you not only survive the test, but pass it as well, the M5 will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our little program. Are you ready to face the M5's Kobayashi Maru?
I am as ready as I'm ever going to be.
M5, load the Kobayashi Maru simulation and prepare to record our guest responses.
Kobayashi Maru, ready.
Best Lower Decks title: A Mathematically Perfect Redemption, Mining the Mind's Mines, I Have No Bones Yet I Must Flee, or The Best Exotic Nanite Hotel.
You can leave that in if you want. My favorite isn't in there, but I have no bones yet I must flee.
What are we learning to play? The Bella Clavion, the Rusican Flute, the Vulcan Lute, or Vibe Tubes?
Vibe Tubes!
Where are we going on vacation? The Ennis Null Ennis planet, the Teplin home planet, or Turkana 4?
How about Turkana 4?
Best Tony Todd appearance: Kern in TNG Redemption Part 2, TNG as Kern Sins of the Father, Kern again Deep Space Nine The Sons of Moog, or as a Hirogen in Voyager's Prey.
Gotta be Sons of Moog.
Which of these villains is the worst? Shinzon, Soren, or Narissa?
Shinzon.
Simulation complete. M5, please compute the results and tell us if our guest has passed the Kobayashi Maru.
Analyzing.
Char, I am pleased to tell you that the M5 has determined that you have passed the Kobayashi Maru simulation. Congratulations.
Woohoo!
And now, the M5, who has analyzed your answers, will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our little podcast. M5, what title shall we award our guest?
Charlynn is awarded the title of Sonic Shower Hygiene Technologist.
So there you go.
Yay, I love it.
So, that's Star Trek for making soap. So there you go.
Nice. Yes. I'm going to put that as my title now. Instead of
As you
soap
should.
maker. That.
As you should.
That sounds way better.
Charlynn, please tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can find your various podcasts, where they can buy your custom soaps, and where they can follow and engage with you.
All right. Yeah. Well, if I have a social media account on a platform that you like, my handle is the Profanity. For the record, I am on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, and nowhere else. If you see another account on another platform that is posing as me, you might want to double check because it's probably not me. And then we'll have to weed that out and get them suspended. Anyway, so you can find me on Mission Log Prodigy, where we are wrapping up Season 2 episode-by-episode coverage, and then we're going to do an overall look back, and we'll have some supplementals before the year is up. And then who knows, because we're still fighting for that third season, but you can find that at Roddenberry Entertainment, either on their YouTube channel, or you can go to podcast.roddenberry.com. You can go to Virtual TrekCon on their YouTube channel for Star Trek and Chill on Fridays. And then, of course, recording and releasing Second Contact with Tristan Riddell, where we do a commentary track for Lower Decks episodes, and we try to release those the day after the episode comes out, but, the mileage varies depending on life. We do the best we can. And you mentioned my soap, bullbubbles.com. That is where I do my handcrafted, cold-processed, Trek-inspired soap. So you're going to find things with, say, an Earl Grey scent, or maybe that looks like Andoria. Who knows what comes out of my head? I have ideas all the time, and I just put them out there and see what sticks. It's fun.
Charlynn, thank you so much for being part of Trek Profiles.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a blast.
Here ends this installment of the Trek Profiles podcast. And before we offer a Trek quote to close this episode, I'd like to remind you that you may send us your subspace messages of mirth, your dispatches of displeasure, or videos of yourself dancing the mamba in the Starbase 80 shuttle bay to feedback at trekprofiles.com, or on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky at Trek Profiles. Anything you send us may be used in the show, or it may be offered up as a sacrifice to the giant space koala. What does he know? This time, I leave you with a quote from Scotty, who in the 2009 Star Trek film said, quote, "I like this ship, it's exciting," close quote. Thanks for listening, and live long and prosper.
This handcrafted podcast is brought to you by Stars and Sky Media Lab. It's cosmic.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on. I think we're going to have a blast, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I agree. This will be so much fun.
Yeah. Okay. So I have some news and weather to go over with you, which I do.
Wow, I didn't notice getting news and weather.
Yes, every time. I'm
So
a
glad
high structure.
I ignored it today.
I'm a high structure kind of guy, so that's how it works. I got the bald head, so I have to lean into that, right? So there you go. But yeah, I had prosthetics. I had the Bolian prosthetics. I had the ears. I had the ridge. I had all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
wow.
that was
What
fun
was
time.
that like wearing the prosthetics? I've never done that.
Well, okay. The makeup artist came up and she did the blue stuff with an airbrush, which was way better than when I had the Followers of Lokai stuff, because that was like clown grease paint.
Oh, boy.
that they just smeared all over me, and she was able to get that line, which is the most important thing, right? Like you can't smudge any of that. And she did a great job with that. But man, it just like got in my pores and it was just, the airbrush went on super easy. But I got to tell you, I was picking, because I have like a lot of eyebrows. I was picking glue out of my eyebrows for forever because there's no eyebrows with Bolians. So they have to obscure all this. So she put obscurant over my eyebrows and then, airbrushed over that. So it looked like I didn't have any. And the ridges, I mean, just pulling that stuff out. Oh God, it was just, it took like 2 days for it to be gone. Truly.
Wow.
But
sounds
anyway,
like an ordeal.
Oh, but it was great. It was great. I'm interested now in a contentious topic.
Ooh, do tell.
Viewing order for Babylon 5. There's like 7 competing ones. So do you have a favorite? Do you have a particular one?
Okay, for B5, here's what I like to do. All 5 seasons straight through. Then the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not the only way to do it. That's just the way I prefer to do it. As far as the episode order, because things are not necessarily in production and airing concurrent,
correct.
I follow Lurker's Guide.
Okay.
So I do that. And then when it comes to Crusade, what a mess. I've done a couple of variations of how to do that now. And I'm really honestly not sure still. So that's how I do it. Now, how do you watch Babylon 5, if I may ask?
One of the problems with Babylon 5 that has nothing to do with the actual show itself is because of how it was broadcast, is that they sometimes moved episodes around because like, the basketball playoffs are going to happen. So and so they're like, all right, well, we need to move this episode up for that reason and move this one around. So like, how in season 5, you've got the whole telepath Byron story?
Yes.
Like if you go by the broadcast order, they stick Day of the Dead right in the middle of that.
Yes, it's
and
mental.
It's like, and it's just like, where's Byron doing in the middle of that? Like, we don't even know what he's doing. You know what I mean?
It doesn't even matter. It's like he's not even there.
Yeah, and it's just the only reason they did that was because of the basketball playoffs. And it's like, no, you have to put that after, right? So you do the
Yes.
you do the whole telepath thing, and then you put that one after.
Yeah, and I believe that's what Lurker's Guide does, just for the record.
Yeah, I'm looking right at it right now. So we got Tragedy of Telepaths, Phoenix Rising, and then Day of the Dead. That's the way to do it. I do recommend to people that they watch Third Space at the appropriate, like, chronological time.
Oh, do you? Okay,
because it is in the middle of season 4.
Yeah.
Because we have Zach getting the uniform, getting the Army of Light uniform, the all black one.
I love that uniform.
Yeah, it's so good. So, but we know that because that happens in Third Space, we know exactly chronologically where it falls.
Sure.
And so, if you want to watch it right there. And I also tell people that they have an option of watching in the beginning, like right after Atonement, or watching at the end of season 4.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
You can do it either way. You can watch it right then, or you can. But the problem is that, like, if you watch the other movie, if you watch Third Space, then it's like, okay, well, Third Space and then in the beginning sort of fall like right within like 2 episodes of each other, like right in the middle of season 4. So it makes it a little weird.
Yeah.
So
I definitely don't recommend watching in the beginning as your very first Babylon 5 episode.
No one should do that.
You will have no idea what's going on.
Joe, you're wrong. JMS has to do that. He's wrong.
Here, you know what? That is what I did. And it was not good. I had no idea what was happening because I came aboard Babylon 5 when it went on TNT because it was in a horrible time slot and moved around a lot when it was first airing in my area. So I could never catch the darn show. I do think my dad did, but he was like, you got to watch this show. I had many friends saying that. I'm like, well, what time is it even on? I would look but it's also the serialized thing. And so they try and catch me up and I'm like, who, what? They did what now? And who's dead? What? It's like a soap opera. I just didn't get it until it came on TNT and I could start from season 1, episode 1. And then went through 5 days a week, 5 new episodes until I caught up, and then was also watching season 5 as it aired concurrently.
I won't put this in the episode, but one of my favorite lines from B5 is, "The future doesn't come with an assembly manual."
Hey, yeah.
Right. Did you remember Turkana 4?
I know, I just guessed that. What is it?
That's the planet the Tashiar came from, like
Oh.
with the rape gangs. Yeah.
Well, I'm not coming back alive from that one. Whoops.
No, well, all those planets are terrible. None of those are good planets. The Ennis planet, that's the one from Deep Space Nine where Kai Opaka ended up, where like they had perpetual combat.
Yeah, no thanks. No
Right.
thanks.
And the Teplin planet was another Deep Space Nine one. That's the planet where they had the blight that the Jem'Hadar infected the planet with.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Fuck
yeah,
that too.
Yeah, no, they're all terrible. They're all
They're all
terrible.
terrible. Okay, honestly, I think I have a better chance going to Tasha's homeworld. Okay.
Boom, diggity, we're done.
Bam, baby.
Was that okay for you?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Are you kidding? That was easy. That was wonderful.
Okay, good. Well, I always want to make sure my guest has a good experience on the show.